A single dad walks into a job interview with his daughter in tow, unaware that the woman observing from the corner office isn't just the CEO's sister, but a secret billionaire looking for someone real in a world built on appearances. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast and yesterday's coffee, the kind of morning scent that clung to everything when life moved just a little too fast. Michael Alvarez stood barefoot on the scuffed linoleum floor, shirt half tucked, his hair still damp from a rushed shower. One hand gripped a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee, the other juggled a frying pan that threatened to scorch Lily's scrambled eggs. "Dad," Lily called from the living room, where she was digging through her backpack, "do you know where my math folder is?" Michael turned down the stove and ran a hand through his hair. "Did you check under the couch? Or in the fridge again?" "That was one time," she said with a huff, "and it was my reading log." He smiled despite the stress tightening his chest. Mornings like this always felt like a race, against the clock, against his fraying nerves, against the gnawing reminder that they were barely getting by. The rent was due in a week. His last temp job had dried up, and today's interview at Hallwell Industries was the only thing standing between them and another month of barely scraping through. "Eggs are up," he said, scooping the steaming pile onto a mismatched plate. "Eat fast, Lil. We've got about 20 minutes before we have to head out." She appeared in the doorway, her hair a wild tangle, socks mismatched, and backpack still unzipped. "What if I stay in the car during your interview?" He paused, setting down the pan. "We'll figure it out." The babysitter he'd lined up had canceled late last night. Some emergency, some excuse, and there wasn't anyone else. His neighbors had jobs, his mother was 3 states away, and he didn't trust leaving Lily with just anyone. Michael glanced at the clock. 22 minutes now. "You're coming with me," he said, ruffling her hair. "Just for a little bit. It's not ideal, but we make do, right?" Lily grinned. "We always do." And with that he packed her lunch, threw on his only clean button-up, and hoped, just for once, that being a good dad wouldn't count against him. The email came in just after noon, the subject line short and sharp. "Position filled. Thank you for your application." Michael stared at it for a full minute, his thumb hovering over the screen of his old phone, the cracked glass catching the light like a cruel joke. He didn't even need to open it. He'd seen enough of those to know how the rest went. "We appreciate your interest. You were one of many qualified applicants. We've chosen to move forward with someone else." He sank onto the edge of the couch, exhaling slowly as if trying not to wake the weight sitting on his chest. Another no. Another dead end. From the kitchen, Lily's voice floated in, soft and distracted. She was humming a song she'd made up about peanut butter while coloring at the table, her little world still bright and unshaken. He envied that. Michael scrolled back through his inbox, scanning for something, anything, that didn't spell rejection. That's when he saw it. Hallwell Industries. Interview invitation. He blinked, clicked, read it twice. "We'd like to invite you for an in-person interview for the position of Facilities Coordinator at Hallwell's downtown campus. Tuesday at 10 a.m. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even close to what he used to do before the layoffs and the hospital bills. But it was steady work. Decent pay. Benefits. A shot at pulling himself out of the hole he and Lily had been circling for the past 2 years. He glanced at the calendar tacked to the fridge. Tuesday. 3 days from now. Enough time to press his one good shirt, maybe borrow a tie from the neighbor if he could muster the pride to ask. "Dad?" Lily peeked around the corner, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" Michael smiled, softening. "I think I might have an interview." Her face lit up. "A real one?" He nodded. "Yeah, a real one." Lily ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "We're going to be okay, right?" He closed his eyes, holding her tight. "Yeah, baby, we're going to be okay." At least, he hoped. The phone buzzed against the kitchen counter just as Michael was adjusting the collar of his shirt in the hallway mirror. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Tina. Not a good sign. He swiped to answer. "Hey, Tina." "Michael, I'm so sorry," she rushed in, voice tight. "I can't watch Lily today. My youngest has a fever, and we're headed to urgent care." Michael closed his eyes. "Is she okay?" "I think so, but I don't want to risk it. I really am sorry." He rubbed his temple. "No, it's fine. I get it. Hope she feels better." The line went dead. He stared at the phone for a second, as if it might magically produce a plan B. It didn't. "Everything okay?" Lily asked, already dressed, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her ponytail crooked. She stood in the doorway with peanut butter on her chin and hope in her eyes. He forced a smile. "Tina can't make it today." "Oh." Lily looked down at her shoes. "Does that mean you can't go?" Michael looked at the clock. 8:42. The interview was at 10. The drive downtown would take at least 30 minutes, maybe more with traffic. He exhaled slowly, kneeling to meet her eyes. "No, kiddo. It just means we improvise." Lily tilted her head. "Improvise?" He stood and grabbed his keys. "It means you're coming with me." She lit up instantly. "To the interview?" Michael gave a half smile. "Yeah, just promise me you'll be quiet, okay? And stay close." "I can do that," she said with a solemn nod. He grabbed her hand, slipping her a granola bar as they headed for the door. He was already rehearsing what he'd say to the receptionist, some honest explanation that hopefully didn't sound like an excuse. As they climbed into the car, Michael glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. She was humming again, swinging her legs like it was any other day. But it wasn't. He was heading into the most important interview of his life, with peanut butter stains on his sleeve and a little girl counting on him more than ever. The office windows of Hallwell Industries stretched floor to ceiling, polished to a mirror sheen. From the top floor, the city looked like a miniature model, tiny cars crawling through streets, people flickering past in a hurry, all of it tinted by the pale glow of early morning sun. Olivia Grant stood near the glass, arms loosely crossed, a steaming mug of green tea in her hand. The building was still quiet, the usual rhythm of meetings and phone calls not yet humming through the halls. She liked these early moments, before her brother, before the board, before the roles they expected her to play took over again. Down below, the main lobby came into view just as the revolving door spun open. Olivia didn't notice at first. She was lost in thought, already dreading the numbers-heavy strategy session she was expected to sit through without asking inconvenient questions. But then she caught movement, two figures stepping inside. A man and a child. She moved closer to the glass. The man looked about 30, maybe older, in a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit across the shoulders. He walked with purpose, but there was something hesitant about him, like he wasn't used to being in buildings with marble floors and gold-trimmed elevators. Beside him was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, clutching a faded backpack and swinging it gently as she walked. Her hand was curled tightly in his. She wasn't crying or scared, just alert, curious, taking it all in. Olivia watched as they approached the front desk. The receptionist leaned forward. The man gestured politely, then said something to the little girl that made her smile. It wasn't unusual for people to bring kids into the building on rare emergencies, executives and department heads whose nannies had called off. But this was different. He didn't belong to the upper floors. He wasn't a name Olivia recognized. Something about him held her attention longer than she expected, not just because he looked out of place, but because he didn't seem embarrassed to be out of place. He looked grounded. From behind her, the elevator dinged. Olivia didn't move. She took a sip of tea, gaze still fixed downward. "Who are you?" she murmured softly. The interview room smelled faintly of lemon-scented polish and old coffee, the kind of sterile cleanliness that made people sit straighter, speak softer. Michael sat across from two members of Hallwell's HR team, both dressed in sleek business attire, both flipping through identical copies of his resume like they were looking for something that just wasn't there. Lily sat quietly beside him, legs swinging from the chair that was far too big for her, a coloring book open in her lap, and a pack of crayons laid out like tools of war. She glanced up at the adults occasionally, her expression curious but calm. Michael had prepped her in the car, whispering reminders and promising her ice cream afterward if she behaved. So far she was holding up her end of the bargain. "I'm sorry again for bringing her," Michael said, his voice even, apologetic but not ashamed. "I had a sitter lined up, but something came up. I didn't want to miss this." Janet, the older of the two interviewers, tapped her pen against the clipboard. "We understand," she said in a tone that suggested they really didn't. "It's just unusual." Michael nodded. "Yeah, I get it, but life's unusual sometimes." There was a pause, awkward stretched too long, and then the younger interviewer, Reggie, cleared his throat. "Let's talk about your background. You listed experience in facilities coordination at Leighton Manufacturing, but there's a gap here? About 2 years?" Michael looked down briefly. "That's when my wife passed. I took time off to get things steady with Lily. Worked a few odd jobs since, maintenance, warehouse, freelance repair, but nothing full-time." Janet scribbled something on her page. Reggie looked at Lily, then back to Michael. "Must be tough, doing all that on your own." Michael gave a quiet laugh. "Some days are tougher than others, but I don't cut corners. Not at home, not at work. I fix what's broken. I show up. That's what I know how to do." Another pause, this one softer. Janet looked up. "You've got heart, Mr. Alvarez." Michael shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just know what it's like to need someone who doesn't give up." Lily, without looking up, added softly, "He's really good at fixing stuff." Reggie smiled despite himself. And just like that, the room shifted, not by much, but enough. Olivia lingered near the hallway outside the glass-walled conference room, her tablet forgotten in her hands. She wasn't eavesdropping, not exactly. But the moment she'd caught a glimpse of the man and his daughter heading into interview room 3, she'd paused, curiosity getting the better of her. It wasn't just that he brought a child to a corporate interview. It was the way he carried himself, shoulders squared, but not puffed up with bravado. The way he held his daughter's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. No apologies, no pretense. Just a man trying to hold his life together with duct tape and quiet grit. She watched now through the glass as the interview unfolded. The HR team sat stiffly across from him, ticking boxes and tapping pens, while the man, Michael, according to the folder Reggie was holding, answered with calm honesty. No exaggerated sales pitch, no buzzwords. He wasn't trying to spin his life story into some elevator-friendly narrative. He was just telling the truth. And that, Olivia realized, was rare. Most of the people who walked through these halls wore masks, ones designed to impress, to maneuver, to blend in. But this guy? He didn't have a mask, or maybe he just couldn't afford one anymore. Olivia's gaze drifted to the little girl, her small form curled in the chair beside her father. She colored quietly, unbothered by the sharp glances or formal atmosphere. Every now and then she glanced up at Michael with a soft smile, like she knew the whole world was resting on his shoulders, but trusted he'd hold it up anyway. Something in Olivia stirred, familiar and foreign all at once. Not pity, not fascination, just recognition. She'd spent her life surrounded by men who postured, who talked fast and thought faster. This one didn't do either. And somehow, that said more. She stepped back from the glass when the interview began to wrap. HR would probably put a note in the file about the disruption, but Olivia wasn't so quick to call it that. Sometimes disruption was exactly what a place like this needed. Sometimes authenticity was the loudest thing in the room. The call came just after dinner, while Michael was scraping dried macaroni off a chipped plate, and Lily was humming off-key in the living room, building a zoo out of couch cushions and stuffed animals. His phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. "Hello?" he answered, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Mr. Alvarez?" a crisp voice replied. "This is Reggie Thomas from Hallwell Industries. Do you have a moment?" Michael's heart kicked up, sharp and sudden. Yes, of course. "We wanted to thank you again for coming in. We've reviewed everything, and we'd like to offer you the position." Michael blinked, staring at the dim kitchen light overhead, as if it might explain what he'd just heard. You're serious?" "We are," Reggie said with a faint chuckle. "Facilities team, second shift to start. Entry level, but full benefits and opportunity for growth. You'd begin Monday pending background check and paperwork." Michael nodded slowly, more to himself than the voice on the phone. Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you." After a few more formalities, the call ended. Michael stood in place for a long second, letting it sink in. The job wasn't glamorous. It was mopping floors, fixing light fixtures, changing filters. But it was steady, it was honest, and it was theirs. He turned toward the living room. "Lily?" She popped her head up from behind the cushioned fort, a tiger plush tucked under one arm. "Yeah, Dad?" He smiled. "We got it." Her eyes went wide. "You mean the job? The one with the elevators and the big lobby?" "That's the one." She squealed and ran to him, arms flung wide, crashing into his legs with a hug that nearly knocked the wind out of him. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, just like he'd told her before. "Yeah, baby," he murmured, holding her close. "We are." As he tucked her into bed later, Michael couldn't shake the strange feeling that had lingered since the interview, like someone had been looking out for him. Not luck exactly, something quieter, more deliberate. He didn't know it yet, but he wasn't wrong. The sun hadn't even cleared the rooftops when Michael stepped off the bus, his boots hitting the pavement with a dull thud. Hallwell's towering glass headquarters gleamed in the early morning light, the kind of building that looked like it belonged in a different world, one with corner offices, personal drivers, and people who didn't count their change at the grocery store. Michael adjusted the strap on his worn backpack and took a steadying breath. First day. First step. He had made it through orientation and background checks, filled out forms with words like direct deposit and 401k that felt foreign but promising. Today was about showing up and staying in the game. He clocked in at 6:59 a.m., 1 minute early. The facility supervisor, a guy named Keith, with a tired face and a coffee thermos the size of a small child, handed him a uniform shirt and a list of starting tasks. "Keep it simple today," Keith said, glancing at a clipboard. "Check the air filters on floors 2 through 5, restock the janitorial supply carts, and fix that busted light panel outside Conference B. Questions?" Michael shook his head. "Nope, I'm good." He wasn't really. Every hour his mind drifted back to Lily. Was she okay with Mrs. Russo, the retired neighbor he'd begged for last-minute help? Would she remember her lunch, her inhaler? Could he even afford to keep paying for daily care at this rate? By noon, his shirt was damp with sweat, and his hands ached from unscrewing fixtures and crawling behind panels that hadn't been touched in years. But there was something satisfying about it, something clean and honest. No spreadsheets, no politics, just things that were broken and someone trusting him to fix them. The hardest part came at the end of his shift, when he stared down at the bus schedule and realized he'd missed the earlier route home by 7 minutes. The next one? 45 more to wait. He sat on a bench outside the building, watching office workers come and go, some in tailored suits, others glued to phones. He didn't envy them, but he did feel far away from them, a different orbit entirely. Still, he smiled faintly. He was here, working, providing. He'd find a way to make the rest work. He always did. The elevator doors were just beginning to close when Michael slipped his hand between them, breathing a little harder than he wanted to admit. He stepped in with a quiet thanks to whoever had held it, though no one had. It was just one other person inside. A woman. She stood near the panel wearing a soft gray coat over a dark blouse, one hand loosely clutching a leather folder. Her hair was swept back in a low ponytail, neat but not overly styled. Expensive but not flashy. Polished but not cold. Michael offered a polite nod and turned to face the front, wiping his hands on his work pants, still dusted faintly with drywall from that stubborn panel on the third floor. The elevator began to hum upward. "Long day?" the woman asked, her voice smooth, with the kind of quiet confidence that made people lean in a little closer. Michael looked over, surprised she was talking to him. "Something like that. Lots of busted fixtures and not enough hours in the day." She smiled. "You work in maintenance?" "Yeah," he said, tapping his ID badge. "Just started this week. Facilities team. I'm Michael." "Nice to meet you, Michael," she replied, extending her hand. "Olivia." Her handshake was warm, not the limp, distracted kind he'd come to expect from people in buildings like this. "You from one of the departments upstairs?" he asked. "Sort of," she said, her lips curving into a half smile. "I'm more in and out these days, but I keep an eye on things." "Good luck with that," Michael chuckled. "This place is like a maze. I've already gotten lost twice." Olivia laughed, and the sound was genuine. "You're not the only one. I've been here for years, and I still take the wrong hallway at least once a week." The elevator dinged. Michael stepped back to let her exit first. "Nice meeting you, Olivia," he said as she walked out. "You too, Michael." She paused, turned slightly, and added with a smile, "Don't let the building win." As the doors slid closed, he shook his head, still smiling. No title, no ego, just a woman in an elevator. He had no idea she owned half the building. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and old books. A cozy corner shop tucked just off Main Street. The kind of place where college kids lingered over laptops and retirees nursed black coffee over dog-eared novels. Olivia hadn't meant to stop in. She'd only planned to walk, clear her head before heading back to the city. But the soft light and low hum of conversation pulled her in. She stood in line, eyes drifting toward the small tables scattered near the window, and then she saw them. Michael and the little girl. He was hunched over a paper cup, looking like he hadn't slept much, wearing the same uniform shirt she'd seen earlier that week in the elevator. Across from him, the girl had her elbows on the table, completely absorbed in a coloring book. Crayons were spread out between them like a rainbow explosion. Olivia hesitated just for a second. Then she stepped out of line and walked toward them. Michael looked up, surprised but not guarded. "Hey," he said with that same quiet, unpolished charm. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," she replied. "Mind if I join you?" He glanced at the empty seat, then at Lily. "That okay with you, kiddo?" Lily looked up, sizing Olivia up with all the seriousness of an 8-year-old. "Sure, I'm coloring giraffes." "Well, that settles it," Olivia said, sitting down. "I like giraffes." Michael smiled. "This is my daughter, Lily. Lily, this is Olivia. We met at work." Lily tilted her head. "Do you fix things too?" Olivia paused. "Not exactly. I help people fix things sometimes." Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to coloring. Michael leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee. "You come here often?" "Not really, but it's quieter than the office, and less fluorescent." They chatted lightly, the kind of easy conversation that fills space without trying too hard. Every now and then, Olivia found herself watching the way Michael looked at Lily, attentive, patient, tired in a way that wasn't bitter. She liked this version of him, off-duty, real. And she found herself wondering, not for the first time, what it might be like to belong to something that simple, something that true. On the 11th floor of Hallwell Industries, behind a frosted glass door marked Executive Access Only, Olivia Grant sat alone in a sleek conference room, sunlight stretching in golden ribbons across the mahogany table. Her leather folder lay open in front of her, filled with quarterly reports and internal memos. But she wasn't reading. Not really. Her eyes lingered on the photo tucked into the corner pocket, a grainy image taken from a building security feed, frozen mid-laugh. Michael and Lily sitting at that tiny cafe table, crayons scattered everywhere. She turned the page, refocusing on the document she was supposed to be signing, a motion to approve yet another departmental reshuffling, a numbers game her brother loved to play. Her brother, Connor Grant, CEO of Hallwell Industries, public face of the company, cunning, polished, camera-ready. He got the headlines. She held the reins. What no one beyond a tight circle of board members knew, not the HR team, not the press, not even most senior executives, was that Olivia owned 51% of Hallwell Industries, a silent partner by design. It had always been that way ever since their father died and left the company to both of them, despite the optics and the whispers. Let Connor smile for the cameras, she'd told herself. Let him handle the politics. She'd handle the soul of the company, quietly, strategically. But lately she wasn't so sure that was working anymore. She closed the folder, her fingers drumming lightly on the cover. The board was pushing harder, the culture shifting into something colder, more transactional. And in the middle of it all was this man, Michael Alvarez, who wasn't looking to climb a ladder or impress a board. He was just trying to make it to bedtime with enough left to try again tomorrow. There was something grounding about that, something real. Her intercom buzzed. "Miss Grant, your brother is asking if you'll be attending the executive lunch." She hesitated. "Tell him I'm reviewing financials." She leaned back in her chair, watching the skyline. No one knew the truth about who really ran Hallwell, but they would, eventually. The apartment smelled faintly of grilled cheese and crayon wax. One of those cozy, mismatched evenings where nothing went quite to plan but somehow felt right anyway. Michael sat at the tiny kitchen table sorting through bills while Lily sprawled on the floor nearby, tongue sticking out slightly in concentration as she scribbled on a sheet of printer paper. She had her purple backpack beside her, the one with the fraying straps and the sparkly star keychain that jingled with every step she took. Her markers were scattered in a chaotic rainbow, uncapped and drying out. Michael should have told her to put them away, but his mind was still stuck in the numbers game playing out in front of him: rent, groceries, gas. The new job helped, but barely. "What you working on, Lil?" he asked, trying to distract himself from the red ink in the corner of the overdue notice. Lily didn't look up. "A picture of you and the nice lady." Michael blinked. "What lady?" She held the paper up with a proud grin. "From the coffee shop. Olivia. I liked her. She didn't talk to me like I was little." Michael took the drawing carefully. Two stick figures sat at a table, one with messy brown hair and big hands, definitely him. The other with long dark hair and a coffee cup. Between them was a smiling figure in a purple backpack holding a crayon. "You gave yourself a cape," he said, smiling. "Duh," Lily replied. "I'm the hero." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, backpack still resting by her bed, picture tucked under her pillow like treasure, Michael stared at the sketch again. There was something about it, about the way Lily had captured that moment, that felt bigger than it should have. Meanwhile, in her own apartment across the city, Olivia opened her inbox to find a scanned copy of the drawing. Subject line: "Thought this might make you smile." It was from Michael. No message, just the image. She stared at it for a long time, longer than she should have, and something unfamiliar settled in her chest, soft, quiet, and dangerous. Hope. The break room on the third floor wasn't glamorous. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the coffee machine wheezed like it had asthma. But it was quiet, and that was enough for Michael, as he stirred powdered creamer into a lukewarm cup of decaf and rubbed the back of his neck. His second week on the job was going better than expected. No disasters, no write-ups, but the logistics were wearing him down. Mrs. Russo, the sweet but scatterbrained neighbor who had been watching Lily, had already missed 2 afternoons. She meant well, But Michael couldn't keep leaving work early or sprinting to the bus stop hoping Lily hadn't wandered too far. It wasn't sustainable. He didn't notice Olivia until she was at the counter, quietly pouring herself a cup of tea. "You look like someone who's been arguing with a spreadsheet," she said without turning around. Michael gave a tired smile. "More like arguing with time." She glanced over her shoulder. "Time's undefeated." "Tell me about it." He took a sip, winced. "You'd think a company this fancy could spring for real cream." Olivia smirked. "We save the good stuff for the boardroom." They sat in a comfortable silence for a beat, the kind that felt more like a pause than a stop. "Everything all right?" she asked, her tone light, casual, but not uninterested. Michael hesitated. He wasn't in the habit of sharing, but something about Olivia, her presence, her calm, made him feel like he didn't need to explain too much. "Just some trouble with childcare. My sitter's been flaking, and I can't exactly leave Lily home with a bowl of cereal and a locked door." Olivia set her cup down. "Have you looked into the Hallwell daycare program?" Michael blinked. "There's a daycare program?" She nodded. "Corporate doesn't advertise it much. Mostly execs use it, but there's room. I could put in a call, if you want." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You can do that." She shrugged. "I know people." He studied her for a second, something flickering behind his gaze. "Thanks, Olivia. That'd mean a lot." "No problem," she said, standing to leave. "Everyone needs someone to pull a string now and then." As the door swung shut behind her, Michael shook his head and smiled. "Just another exec, huh?" "Right." The boardroom was glass and chrome, sharp lines, cold light, and the quiet hum of power radiating from every polished surface. Olivia sat at the far end of the long table, fingers laced, expression neutral, as her brother Connor paced near the wall of screens displaying quarterly projections and market shares. "Look," he said, not for the first time, "I'm all for your little philanthropy streak, but getting too close to people like him?" He turned to her now, arms folded. "It sends the wrong message." Olivia's brows lifted slightly. "People like who?" Connor scoffed, walking back toward the table. "The maintenance guy. Alvarez, the one with the kid." He said it like it was a line item. "You think no one's noticed you're spending a little extra time downstairs?" She didn't respond right away, letting his words hang in the air like smoke. "You forget," he continued, "we built this company on reputation. Image. You start playing favorites with the janitorial staff. The lines blur. We can't afford that." Olivia leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing just slightly. "So, being human is a liability now?" Connor gave a tight smile. "Being seen caring too much is. There's a reason we keep our names off half the paperwork, Liv. We're the face of this company, not the heart." "And maybe that's the problem," she said quietly. He paused, thrown off just enough to frown. "What's that supposed to mean?" She stood, gathering her tablet and folder. "You talk a lot about legacy, about maintaining the brand, but somewhere along the way, we stopped asking why we're doing this." "Don't get sentimental," he warned. "It's business." "No," Olivia said, stepping toward the door. "It's people, and some of us haven't forgotten that." She left without another word, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Out in the hallway, her reflection caught in the dark glass, flawless, composed, just like it was supposed to be. But inside, something had shifted. She wasn't sure when she'd started caring about Michael Alvarez. She only knew that she did, and maybe, for once, that was reason enough. The permission slip had been taped to the fridge for 2 weeks, a bright yellow rectangle with cartoon animals marching across the top. Lily's class was going to the city zoo, her first field trip since kindergarten, and she'd been counting down the days with the kind of wide-eyed excitement that made Michael's chest ache. But the shift schedule had landed like a hammer the day before. Mandatory coverage on Friday, no swaps, no excuses. Michael had sat Lily down at breakfast, his coffee growing cold as he watched her face fall when he told her he couldn't go. "It's okay, Dad," she said, stirring her cereal too fast. "You have to work, I get it. But she didn't really, and he didn't blame her. That morning, he walked her to the school bus in silence, then stood on the curb for a long moment after it pulled away. Guilt was a familiar weight. Still, today it felt heavier than usual. Olivia stood near the edge of the bus lot, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes, a carefully packed lunch bag in hand. She hadn't been to a school in years, maybe not since her own tightly managed childhood, where field trips were luxuries and emotions were monitored like investment portfolios. She spotted Lily right away. The girl stepped off the bus with her class, wide-eyed, clutching a laminated zoo map. When she saw Olivia standing near the gate, her expression lit up like a firework. "Miss Olivia?" Olivia knelt. "Hey, Lily. You came?" "I did. I figured every explorer needs a field trip, buddy." Lily didn't hesitate. She took Olivia's hand like they'd done this 100 times before. "Can I call you Miss Liv?" she asked a few minutes later, as they stood watching a sleepy giraffe chew lazily behind the glass. Olivia's smile was soft, almost shy. "Yeah, I'd like that." The day passed in snapshots, Lily pointing out monkeys, laughing at the penguins, handing Olivia a melted fruit snack with all the generosity of royalty. And somewhere in between the elephant enclosure and the reptile house, Olivia realized something she hadn't expected. She wasn't just showing up for Lily, she was showing up for herself. The sun was slipping behind the skyline, throwing warm streaks of gold across the parking lot as the last of Hallwell's employees trickled out. Michael was just finishing up his shift, the back of his neck damp with sweat and his hands smudged with grease from replacing a faulty panel in the loading bay. He was ready to head home, heat up leftovers, and collapse. That's when he saw her. Olivia standing beside a sleek black sedan near the edge of the lot, hood up, phone in one hand, frustration clear on her face even from a distance. He jogged over without thinking. "Trouble?" he asked, already peeking under the hood. She looked up, startled at first, then relieved. "I was going to call a service, but they said it'd be over an hour. I think it's the battery, but I honestly have no idea." Michael grinned. "Mind if I take a look?" "Please, I'm not above accepting help tonight." He rolled up his sleeves, leaned in, and within seconds was fiddling with the terminals like it was second nature. Olivia stepped back, watching him with quiet curiosity. "You do this kind of thing in your sleep, don't you?" she asked. Michael chuckled. "Used to run a little garage before everything went sideways. Now I just fix what breaks and hope nothing else does." Olivia tilted her head. "You miss it?" He shrugged. "Sometimes. I miss working for myself. Miss the smell of motor oil more than I should probably admit." She laughed, light, genuine, the sound of someone letting their guard down. 10 minutes later, the engine coughed, then roared to life. Olivia beamed like he'd just pulled off a miracle. "You really are good at fixing things," she said, climbing behind the wheel. Michael leaned on the door, grinning. "Like I said, it's what I know." She didn't start the car right away. Instead, she looked up at him, the glow of the dashboard softening her features. "Thank you, Michael, for this, and the daycare, and Lily." He nodded. "Any time." There was a quiet moment between them, not awkward, not rushed, just there. "Want to grab coffee sometime?" she asked suddenly, almost like she surprised herself. Michael raised an eyebrow. "You asking me out, Miss Liv?" She smiled. "I'm asking you for company. The rest is negotiable." And for the first time in a long time, Michael said yes without hesitation. The invitation came in the form of a folded note tucked inside Lily's backpack. Michael found it late in the evening after sorting through her crumpled math worksheets and half-eaten granola bars. The handwriting was clean, elegant. Dinner? Nothing fancy, just food, conversation, and maybe a little laughter. Friday, 6 p.m., my place. Bring Lily. Live. He stared at the note for a long moment, heart beating a little faster than he liked to admit. It was casual, friendly even, but still. Dinner at her place, that wasn't coffee in the break room or a wave in the elevator. It felt intentional. Friday came quicker than he expected. He didn't own much that qualified as nice, but he managed to find a collared shirt that only had one frayed cuff and made Lily promise not to wear glitter. She didn't. Instead, she wore a yellow dress with pink socks and carried a drawing rolled up in her hands like it was a treasure. Olivia's apartment was nothing like Michael imagined. Yes, it was sleek and well lit, but it wasn't cold. There were books stacked unevenly on the shelves, a few too many throw pillows on the couch, and a plant in the corner that looked like it was winning a battle for its life. "You made spaghetti?" Michael said, surprised as the smell of garlic and tomato filled the kitchen. Olivia grinned. "I did. I even Googled how not to mess it up." Lily climbed into a chair like she'd always belonged there and handed Olivia her drawing, another masterpiece featuring stick figures holding hands under a starry sky. Olivia blinked at it longer than necessary, her fingers tracing one of the tiny figures labeled Miss Liv. Dinner was easy, comfort food and unfiltered laughter. Olivia and Lily talked about favorite animals and jelly bean flavors while Michael just watched them, something warm building in his chest. It wasn't just attraction, though, that was undeniably there. It was the way Olivia looked at Lily like she mattered, like they both did. As the night wound down and Lily started to nod off against his shoulder, Michael met Olivia's gaze across the table. Something had shifted, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself wonder, what if this could be more? The rain had started softly, a quiet patter against the windows as Olivia poured 2 cups of tea and joined Michael on the couch. Lily had fallen asleep in the spare room after a movie and a second helping of dessert, her breathing now slow and steady behind the closed door. Michael sat with one arm draped over the back of the couch, legs stretched out, his expression relaxed but curious. There was a pause between them, comfortable but heavy, like something waiting to be said. Olivia cradled her mug, eyes fixed on the swirl of steam. "You ever feel like people only see what they expect to?" Michael looked over. "All the time. Usually involves grease stains and being underestimated." She smiled faintly, but there was a fragility to it, like glass held just a little too tight. "I grew up in a house where expectations were louder than people. My father, Hallwell's founder, was brilliant, disciplined, demanding. He ran our home the way he ran his company. Every meal was scheduled, every conversation monitored, even laughter had to be composed." Michael didn't speak, letting her go on. "I was the youngest. Connor was always the golden one. Perfect grades, perfect manners. He wanted the company since he was 10. Me? I liked painting, books, the quiet things." She let out a soft breath. "But no one ever asked what I wanted. They just assumed I'd fall in line." She stared out at the rain. "Even now, people think Connor's the one in charge. He's the face, the name. I'm just the sister with a title and too much time. But I own more than half of Hallwell. I make the calls behind the curtain, and still, they look right past me." Michael was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I don't." She looked at him. "I don't look past you," he repeated. "Not then, not now." Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability flickering to something braver, steadier. "That scares me more than it should." Michael reached out, his fingers brushing hers. "Being seen's not a bad thing, Liv. It just means someone's finally paying attention." And in the stillness between their hands, the wounds of the past didn't disappear. But for the first time, they didn't feel so lonely. It started with a photo. A grainy zoom lens shot taken through the rain-specked glass of a cafe window. Olivia bent forward, laughing at something Lily had said while Michael sat beside them, mid-sip of coffee, his eyes on both of them like they were his whole world. The headline wasn't subtle. "Heiress of Hallwell or Heartthrob's New Flame?" Olivia Grant spotted getting cozy with mystery man and child. Within hours, it was everywhere. Michael found out at 6:47 a.m., hunched over a bowl of cereal while Lily sleepily kicked her legs under the table. His phone buzzed with a dozen missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, followed by a message from Keith. Might want to stay under the radar today. PR's having a meltdown. Confused, he clicked the link someone had sent. There they were, him, Lily, Olivia. Frozen in a moment he thought was theirs alone. Across the city, Olivia was already sitting in her brother's office, jaw clenched, fingers drumming against her thigh as Connor waved the magazine in the air like it was evidence at a trial. "Do you know what this looks like?" he demanded. She stared at him. "Yeah, it looks like 3 people getting coffee." To the board, "It looks like you're getting involved with some maintenance worker and parading it in front of the company like a rom-com subplot. This isn't good for your image, Olivia." She stood slowly, controlled. Maybe the image needs changing. Connor stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You want to play social worker? Fine, but do it quietly. This becomes a narrative." "It's already a narrative," she shot back. "One I didn't ask for, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." Back in his apartment, Michael sat with his phone in his hand, staring at the headline. Lily leaned against his side, munching cereal. "Is that us?" she asked, pointing to the photo. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's us." She smiled. "I look cute." And despite the chaos swirling outside their door, Michael couldn't help but laugh. Because, yeah, she did. And maybe, just maybe, that meant they were doing something right. The office was buzzing with whispers. Conversations halted when Michael walked by, replaced with the kind of silence that told him everything and nothing all at once. He felt it in the way people looked at him, too curious, too careful. It wasn't until he found Keith in the supply room, eyes wide and awkward, that he got the full picture. "You all right, man?" Keith asked, rubbing the back of his neck. Michael frowned. "Should I not be?" Keith hesitated, then held out his phone. "You didn't see this?" The screen showed a business profile. Olivia Grant, majority shareholder of Hallwell Industries. There was a headshot, glossy and formal, a list of credentials, her net worth, her legacy, her position above every single person in the company, including him. Michael stared at it like it might rearrange itself into something else, something true. He left work early, didn't even clock out, just walked out the back door, heart pounding, 1,000 moments flashing through his head. Olivia laughing with Lily at the cafe. Olivia fixing her tea in the break room like she belonged there. Olivia telling him she knew people when she offered help with childcare. She'd never lied, but she never told the truth either. That evening, Olivia knocked on his apartment door, hair swept up, her coat still damp from the drizzle. She looked unsure for the first time since he'd met her. "I was going to tell you," she said softly. "I just didn't know how." Michael stood in the doorway, jaw tight, arms crossed. "So what was this?" he asked. "Some experiment? A chance to slum it and feel good about yourself?" Her face paled. "No, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Liv? Because I thought I knew who you were, and now I'm not sure any of it was real." She took a breath. "It was. I promise you it was." But the wall was already going up around him, brick by careful brick. He wasn't angry because she was rich. He was angry because she let him believe they were equals when she'd been standing on higher ground all along. "I need some space," he said quietly, before closing the door between them. And for the first time in her carefully curated life, Olivia didn't know how to fix it. The night air was thick with the smell of summer rain, the sidewalk still wet and reflecting the city lights like shards of broken glass. Olivia stood outside the community center where Michael had agreed to meet, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat, heart rattling like it was trying to escape her chest. She saw him before he saw her, walking with that steady, familiar stride, backpack slung over one shoulder, jaw tight. When he stopped a few feet away, the space between them felt wider than the sidewalk could ever explain. "You wanted to talk," he said flatly. "I did," Olivia replied, voice quiet. "I needed to." Michael looked at her like he was trying to recognize someone in a crowd. You could have told me from the beginning. Hell, even after the first week. But you let me think you were someone else. I never lied to you, she said. You never had to, he shot back. You just left out the part where you're a billionaire who owns the building I mop the floors in. She flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Liv? His voice rose slightly, pain peeking through the cracks. Was this some kind of social experiment? Find the noble single dad and see how long it takes for him to fall for the boss's sister? No, she said firmly. I spent my entire life being seen as someone's last name, the heir, the figurehead. With you, I didn't want to be that. I just wanted to be me, Olivia. Michael laughed bitterly. Must be nice, to choose when you get to be real. That hit her like a slap. He saw it, and for a second the anger in his face faltered. I didn't mean, he started, but she held up a hand. No, you did, and maybe you're right, she swallowed. But I didn't come into your life to manipulate you. I came because I liked you, and I stayed because I care. Silence fell again, heavy, unforgiving. Michael stepped back. Caring doesn't undo the lie, Liv. And with that he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in her chest long after he was gone. She didn't follow. She couldn't. The days blurred into each other, a quiet grind of routine and responsibility. Michael woke early, packed Lily's lunch, dropped her off at school, then clocked in at Hallwell before most of the office lights were on. He worked harder than ever, fixing, replacing, tightening, cleaning. The tasks were familiar, physical, and mercifully numb. He didn't ask questions. He didn't take breaks. And he didn't look up at the elevator to the executive floors, not once. Olivia hadn't been seen since the morning after their fight. No flutter of her coat in the hallway, no polite small talk in the break room, no chance run-ins at the cafe. It was as if she'd vanished. Keith mentioned she'd taken a leave of absence, whatever that meant. Rumors floated. Some said she was traveling. Others claimed she was stepping back from the company altogether. Michael didn't ask. He didn't want to care. But he did. Late at night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment had fallen into its soft, humming quiet, he'd find himself scrolling past her name in his phone. Never dialing, just lingering. Lily, too, noticed the absence in the way only a child can, quietly, with questions folded into silence. "Is Miss Liv okay?" she asked one night, curled beside him on the couch, drawing again. Michael stared at the television, the show in front of him forgotten. "I don't know," he said. "She never said goodbye." "I don't think she meant to leave." Lily nodded, as if that was enough, but it wasn't, for either of them. At work, Michael started staying later, taking on extra shifts when he could. It was easier than thinking, easier than feeling that slow ache in his chest whenever he passed the conference room where they once locked eyes through the glass. He tried to convince himself it didn't matter anymore. She was part of a world he never belonged in. And maybe she realized that before he did. The afternoon sun slanted across the living room floor, turning everything gold. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, her purple backpack beside her, and a crayon clutched tightly in one hand. She was unusually quiet, brows furrowed in concentration, as she leaned over a piece of lined notebook paper. Michael, drying dishes in the kitchen, glanced over. "Homework?" "Nope," she said without looking up. "I'm writing Miss Liv a letter." Michael's hands paused mid-motion. The dish towel sagged in his grip. "Lily, she's not... She might not answer, you know." "I know," Lily said, her voice small. "But maybe she needs someone to say hi." Michael didn't have the heart to stop her. When she was done, she folded the letter carefully and slipped it into an envelope, addressed in her careful, slightly crooked handwriting, "Miss Liv Hallwell, Building Big Office, Top Floor City, USA." She drew a tiny heart in the corner and slid a sticker of a giraffe across the seal. "I'm going to ask Mrs. Russo to mail it for me," she said matter-of-factly, like it was just another errand. Michael nodded, throat tight. "Okay, that's really thoughtful of you." He didn't expect anything to come of it. But 3 days later, the envelope landed on a secretary's desk at Hallwell's headquarters. The assistant nearly tossed it in the junk pile. No return address, no department listed. But something about the childish handwriting made her pause. She brought it up to the restricted floor, assuming it was for the PR team. But when Olivia, freshly returned from her leave, passed by on her way to her office, the envelope caught her eye. She froze. Her name scrawled in purple crayon. She took it without a word, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside was a letter written with big looping letters. Dear Miss Liv, are you okay? We miss you. My dad is sad but doesn't say it. I think you should come back. He liked when you laughed. I did too. Also, I drew you a giraffe. Love, Lily. Olivia sat down slowly, staring at the letter like it held more weight than any contract she'd ever signed. And for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could finally breathe again. Olivia sat alone in her office, the city skyline stretching wide beyond the glass, but her focus was pinned to the piece of lined paper in her hands. The crayon letters were uneven, misspelled in places, but full of something no board meeting had ever given her. Truth. He liked when you laughed. I did too. She read that line again and again until it blurred. The past few weeks had been a haze of avoidance. She'd buried herself in silence, in old wounds, in the fear that maybe she had been playing a part all along, just like the world expected. The heiress who didn't belong to her own name, the businesswoman hiding behind spreadsheets and titles, the woman who cared too much but never said enough. She'd walked away from Michael because it was easier than explaining, easier than risking her heart in a world where people left once they saw the full picture. Her wealth, her power, her carefully kept secrets, they'd always been armor. But Lily's letter pierced straight through it. There was no pretense in that child's words, no angle, just kindness, clarity, a small voice that somehow saw right through her. Are you okay? You should come back. And beneath it all, the question Olivia had been too scared to ask herself. Why did I leave in the first place? Not just the building, not just Michael, but everything real. She traced the giraffe Lily had drawn, a wobbly creature with big eyes and a crooked neck, and let out a shaky laugh. It was ridiculous and perfect. She had run from being seen because being seen meant being vulnerable. And she'd spent a lifetime avoiding that kind of risk. But maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe, just this once, it was worth being brave. She reached for her phone, heart pounding, fingers hovering over Michael's name. Then she stopped. No, this time she wouldn't call. She would go to him, in person. Not as Olivia Grant, majority shareholder of Hallwell, but as the woman who missed his laugh, and his daughter's drawings, and the version of herself she'd only ever been when she was with them. The executive boardroom was full, tension hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Suits lined the polished table, voices low and murmuring over quarterly reports and cost-cutting strategies. At the head sat Connor Grant, all charm and confidence, flipping through a presentation with barely contained impatience. Next quarter's budget, he said, tapping the screen. If we trim operations and maintenance and facilities by 8%, we can reallocate to R&D without hitting executive bonuses. We're not doing that. Olivia's voice cut through the room like glass. Heads turned. Connor looked up, blinking. Excuse me? She stood at the far end of the table, composed, calm, and unshakably clear. We're not balancing budgets by stripping the people who keep this company running. Not anymore. Connor frowned. Olivia, this isn't personal. Yes, it is. She stepped forward. You want to slash the pay of the same people who fix your elevators, clean your boardrooms, and stay late without overtime? People like Michael Alvarez, who show up every single day, not because they're chasing stock options, but because they need to feed their kids. Murmurs rippled through the room. Connor's voice dropped, icy and controlled. This is about him, isn't it? I told you to keep your distance. This isn't about who I care for. Olivia interrupted, steady and fierce. It's about what this company claims to value, and how far we've drifted from that. We talk about innovation, but we treat half our staff like they're disposable. One of the board members cleared their throat, watching her closely. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we start acting like we're worth the name Hallwell. Fair wages, real support systems, transparency, and yes, opportunities for advancement that aren't reserved for people in tailored suits. Connor leaned back in his chair, amused but uneasy. And what if the board disagrees? Olivia's eyes didn't flinch. Then they can buy back my shares. Silence fell like a hammer. Connor stared at her for a long moment. He knew she meant it. Everyone in the room did. She wasn't bluffing. She was done being quiet. And just like that, the power in the room shifted. Not loud, not violent, but permanent. Olivia Grant had taken her seat at the table. And this time she wasn't giving it back. Michael was elbow-deep in a busted HVAC panel on the 6th floor when the call came through on his work radio. Facilities, Michael Alvarez, report to the executive office, ASAP. He froze. The voice was crisp, formal, and definitely not Keith's. Around him, the whir of fluorescent lights and background office chatter felt suddenly distant. Michael wiped his hands on a rag, glanced down at his smudged work shirt, and sighed. Great, he muttered, half expecting to be told he'd violated some unspoken corporate code by existing too loudly. Maybe it was the photos. Maybe someone finally decided they'd had enough of the single dad in the building. By the time he reached the top floor, nerves sat tight in his chest like coiled wire. He stood outside the glass office door marked C. Grant, wondering if this was the kind of story that ended with a box of belongings and a polite escort to the elevator. The door opened before he could knock. To his surprise, it wasn't Connor Grant standing inside. It was Olivia, and she wasn't alone. Connor sat behind the massive desk, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Olivia stood to the side, her posture straight but calm, like she was anchoring the room. "Michael," she said, voice soft but steady. "Come in." He stepped inside slowly. "Is everything all right?" Connor nodded once. "Depends on how you look at it." Olivia stepped forward. "We're launching a new initiative, Hallwell Horizons. It's a community-based outreach program, skilled trades, mentorship, career development for under-resourced neighborhoods." Michael blinked. "Okay." "And we want you to run it," she continued, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Coordinate teams, design the programs, be the face of something real." He looked between them. "Me?" "You've lived it," Olivia said. "You are it." Connor gave a reluctant shrug. "Her idea, backed by the board. You start Monday." Michael was stunned. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Olivia said. "You don't have to change who you are. We're just giving you the space to do more of it." For a long beat, he just stood there, absorbing the moment. Then he smiled, slow, honest, and deeply rooted. "Yes," he said. "Let's do it." The gym-turned-community center still smelled faintly of sawdust and new paint, but it was alive now, kids laughing in the halls, the low rumble of conversation echoing off freshly scrubbed walls, and the hum of something that felt like hope. Michael stood near the back, watching a group of teens huddle around a workbench as they built a bike from spare parts. His hands were tucked in his back pockets, eyes focused, but his mind was miles away. The last few weeks had moved fast, too fast. The new role fit him better than he'd expected, but a part of him still felt like he was waiting for something, or someone. That's when he saw her. Olivia stood just inside the doorway, framed by sunlight spilling through the tall windows. She wore no makeup, no designer coat, just jeans, a soft sweater, and a familiar hesitance in her eyes. In her hand was a folded piece of notebook paper, Lily's letter. Michael didn't move at first, neither did she. Then, slowly, Olivia crossed the room, her steps soft against the old gym floor. She stopped in front of him, her fingers brushing the edges of the letter like it might crumble. "I got this," she said, voice tight. He nodded, his throat too thick to answer. "It sat on my desk for 2 days before I could even read it all the way through," she added with a shaky breath. "I kept telling myself it was just a note from a sweet kid, but it wasn't." Michael's gaze softened. "It was a mirror," Olivia continued. "It showed me the version of myself I've been running from and the version of us I threw away." She unfolded the paper and held it out. "Lily reminded me what it means to show up. No masks, no fear." There were tears in her eyes now, real, unguarded. Michael took the letter, folding it gently, like something sacred. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed us," he replied. Then he pulled her into his arms, quiet, certain, and the weight of everything they hadn't said melted between them, not fixed, not forgotten, but forgiven. And finally, home. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the path as Michael, Olivia, and Lily walked slowly through the city park, the world quiet except for the gentle rustle of leaves and the occasional bark of a dog somewhere in the distance. Olivia held Lily's hand, their fingers swinging gently in rhythm. Michael walked just beside them, his hands in his jacket pockets, glancing over every so often with that soft, uncertain smile he hadn't quite learned to relax into yet. The air between them felt lighter than it had in weeks, still tender, still healing, but no longer fragile. Lily was talking nonstop, animatedly retelling a story from school involving a spilled juice box, a runaway hamster, and a substitute teacher who may or may not have cried. Olivia laughed in the right places, eyes sparkling, and Michael shook his head, the sound of Lily's voice doing something steadying to the quiet places inside him. They came to a bench near a small pond, and Lily ran ahead to toss crumbs from a bag she'd insisted on bringing for the ducks. Olivia sat first. Michael followed, their knees nearly touching. "She's incredible," Olivia said, watching Lily as she leaned out over the edge of the pond, narrating each duck's personality as though she knew them personally. "She is," Michael said. "I keep thinking one day I'm going to mess it all up, like it's too good to last." Olivia turned to him. "You're not. And if it ever feels too good, maybe it's just finally good enough." He looked at her, really looked, and saw it. No makeup, no titles, no polished lines, just Olivia, just her. Lily came running back with a dandelion in her hand, thrusting it toward Olivia. "You need this. It's for wishes." Olivia took it with care. "Do I tell it out loud?" "Nope," Lily said seriously. "You keep it quiet. But if you really mean it, it comes true." Olivia looked at the flower for a long moment, then closed her eyes and made a wish. She didn't say it, but Michael swore he could hear it anyway. "Please let this last." And for once, that felt like something the world just might grant. The sunlight poured into the apartment in soft, golden beams, catching flecks of dust in the air and warming the worn hardwood floors. The smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen, mingled with the faint hum of a Sunday morning cartoon playing in the background. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of morning that didn't ask much, only that you showed up and stayed a while. Michael stood by the stove, flipping pancakes one-handed while sipping coffee from a chipped mug. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair still messy from sleep, and he looked more rested than he had in weeks. Every few minutes, he glanced over his shoulder at the small kitchen table. Olivia sat there in an oversized sweatshirt, sleeves pushed up, helping Lily glue googly eyes onto a construction paper octopus. Her hair was piled in a loose bun, no earrings, no makeup. She looked so unlike the woman he'd first met, yet somehow more herself than ever. She laughed at something Lily said, head tilted back just slightly, and Michael felt something pull in his chest. They hadn't defined anything. There was no label, no dramatic decision to start over, just this. Shared breakfasts, late-night texts that turned into sleepy phone calls, quiet walks after dinner. Trust was being rebuilt in inches, not leaps. And that was okay. Because Olivia didn't try to fix everything now. She just showed up. Whether it was folding laundry while Lily did homework or staying silent when Michael needed space, she was learning him, and he was learning her, too. The way she kept tea in her bag, the way her fingers fidgeted when she was nervous, the way she always found a reason to reach for Lily first, like the bond they'd built had never truly cracked. "Pancakes ready?" Olivia asked, smiling over her shoulder. Michael plated the last stack and walked it over. "With extra syrup. You've been promoted to official taste tester." Lily clapped. "We're a pancake team." Michael sat down, took a deep breath, and looked at the two girls across the table from him, one laughing, one beaming. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it settle deep in his chest. This is what starting over looks like. And this time, he wouldn't run from it. The evening was quiet, the kind that wrapped around you like a favorite sweater. Outside, the city buzzed in the distance, but inside Michael's apartment, the lights were low and the world had slowed. Lily was already tucked into bed, her usual whirlwind of questions replaced by the soft, even breath of sleep. Michael and Olivia sat on the couch, legs barely touching, a mug of tea cooling between them. The TV played on mute, some old black-and-white movie they'd never bothered to follow. Neither of them said much at first. They didn't need to. But Olivia's hands wouldn't stay still. She twisted the corner of her sleeve, smoothed the edge of the throw pillow, glanced at him, then away again. "I need to tell you something," she said finally, her voice soft, not unsure, but careful. Michael turned toward her. "Okay." She took a deep breath, then met his eyes. "I've spent most of my life trying to be what other people needed. The polished daughter, the quiet investor, the woman behind the curtain who made sure everything looked perfect." He stayed quiet, giving her space. "But the truth is, I don't want to be just a Grant, or a figurehead, or someone who shows up in headlines but never in real life." Her voice faltered, but only for a moment. "What I want, what I really want, is something that feels like mine, something real, something messy, something earned." Michael didn't speak right away. He just watched her, like he was seeing her all over again for the first time. "I don't want a legacy," Olivia said. "I want a life. I want Sunday mornings. I want pancake messes and crayon drawings. I want to build something that doesn't come with press releases or stock reports." She leaned in just slightly, searching his face. "And if you'll have me, I want that with you." Michael's breath caught, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he felt it too. Every word, every pause. "No labels?" he asked quietly. "No labels," she echoed. "Just us." He reached for her hand, their fingers lacing easily, and in that moment it didn't matter who she was on paper. She was his. And that was more than enough. The park was bathed in soft spring sunlight, the kind that made everything feel gentle and full of promise. Lily raced ahead on the trail, her purple sneakers kicking up bits of gravel as she waved a stick in the air like it was a magic wand. Michael and Olivia strolled behind her, walking in easy rhythm, their shoulders brushing now and then. A picnic blanket was tucked under Michael's arm, and Olivia carried a bag full of juice boxes and peanut butter sandwiches Lily had insisted on helping make. "She used almost half a jar," Olivia whispered with a grin. "She believes in abundance," Michael said, smiling, "especially when it comes to peanut butter." They laid the blanket near a grove of trees and settled in, watching as Lily balanced on the edge of a nearby log, arms out like a tightrope walker. She was humming to herself, some song she'd made up that only she knew the words to. "Okay," she declared suddenly, turning toward them. "Time for questions." "Oh boy," Michael muttered. "Here we go." "Question 1, Lily said, pointing her stick at Olivia like it was a microphone. "Are you going to marry my dad?" Olivia blinked. Michael choked on a sip of lemonade. "Lily," he coughed, "you can't just ask people that." "Why not?" she said innocently. "You like each other, and you already kiss sometimes when you think I'm not looking." Olivia's face flushed, but she was laughing. Surprised, yes, but not uncomfortable. She glanced at Michael, then turned back to Lily. "Maybe," she said with a smile, "one day." Lily beamed. Cool. Can I be the flower girl? You'd be the only flower girl, Michael said, chuckling, and probably the boss of the whole thing. Lily nodded like this had already been decided in her head. And I want the cake to have sprinkles. Sprinkles, Olivia said, locking eyes with Michael. We can do sprinkles. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of games and laughter, but something had shifted, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet certainty that came with a promise left unspoken. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to, because now they had time. The school gym buzzed with laughter and music, its walls decked out in construction paper stars and handmade posters announcing the spring fundraiser Carnival. Kids darted between booths, clutching tickets and sticky cotton candy, while parents mingled near bake sale tables and ring toss games. The scent of popcorn, face paint, and too many juice boxes filled the air. Michael stood near the raffle table, his arm around Olivia's waist, and a red balloon tied to his wrist, courtesy of Lily. She was only a few feet away, leading a dance circle of second graders with the kind of joyful chaos that could only come from unfiltered confidence and unlimited sugar. She's in her element, Olivia said, watching Lily spin like a top in the middle of the gym. Michael smiled. She takes after you. No fear. I think she takes after you, Olivia replied softly. Heart first. The past few weeks had felt like settling into something they didn't have words for yet. A rhythm, a bond, not marked by milestones or announcements, but by shared mornings, quiet support, and the growing ease of simply being together, not needing to explain it, just choosing it. The school principal approached with a warm smile. So glad you could make it tonight. Lily's been talking about this all week. We wouldn't have missed it, Michael said. She told me you three were doing family costumes for the talent show skit, the principal added with a grin. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Did she now? Michael laughed. This is how she gets us to agree to things. Total public exposure. She's clever, Olivia said. Sneaky. She's ours, he replied. Olivia turned to look at him fully, her eyes bright. Yeah, she is. Lily ran over, cheeks flushed, out of breath. Did I win anything in the raffle? Michael shook his head. Not yet, but we've still got tickets. Good, she said, grabbing both their hands. We still have to do the three-legged race. We're a team, remember? They nodded, linking arms, moving as one toward the starting line. No last names, no headlines, no boardrooms. Just a man, a woman, and a little girl, choosing every day to be something more than expected, something stronger, a family,